All right, welcome into our Patriots Q A. Thanks for joining us. Evan, we're going to take some questions from the Twitter sphere and from our live chat about the Patriots. Let's start. We already got a couple questions here in the live chat, so let's start with Joel. If Brady struggled with the same offense last year, what on earth makes you think Stidham has any chance?
All right, welcome into
Bill
our
did nothing to get an
Patriots
A+ talent. Bill did nothing to get an A+ talent.
Well, Joel, I knew that this take from you is not surprising, my friend, but I think the reason why you hope for optimism, at least from Jarrett Stidham, is a year two bump for some of those guys that were rookies last year, or Mohamed Sanu being a veteran acquisition last year at the deadline. You hope that he's healthier, he has a better season. You hope Nikhil Harry has a better season, and then you go and you add 2 tight ends in the draft as well. And you just kind of hope that the sum of the parts is better than, one individual talent in that case. And adding a bunch of kind of B+B players to the roster in the offseason, then also adding in hopefully a better year for guys like Nikhil Harry. They can sort of evolve from within, if you will, instead of them going out and getting a big time pass catcher, a Stephon Diggs, a DeAndre Hopkins, or someone like that. You just kind of hope that everybody sort of elevates their game together as a unit.
Absolutely. And I think maybe the dust has settled on Patriots fans being wildly upset with the Patriots for not drafting wide receiver in the 2020 NFL draft. Obviously, they signed a few undrafted free agents following the draft. We went in depth on a couple of those guys. You can check those videos out on our YouTube channel at Patriots Press Pass and CLNS Media. But Christina here in the live chat's asking what your projection is for the receiving core, and do any of those UDFAs have a chance to make the roster in your estimation?
That's a good question. I think honestly, it's early. Obviously, it's early, but the top 4, I would say, of Harry, Edelman, Sanu, and Damari Byrd. And then I would say even the top 5 with Jacoby Myers thrown in there as well. I think those guys are pretty safe roster-wise. Some of them are locks, right? Harry, Edelman, locks, certainly at that spot. But I think that Byrd's addition, the team is a lot higher on him than maybe people on the outside looking in are. They are very optimistic that he can actually elevate that Philip Dorsett role and be somebody that can create after the catch as well as take the top off the defense. So they really like Damari Byrd. I think that they obviously still really like both of the second-year guys in Myers and Harry. So those 5 is a pretty kind of set depth chart, I would say, there, unless one of those guys at the back end, like a Byrd or a Myers, goes really off the reservation in training camp. It's going to be hard for one of these new UDFAs to beat them out. With that said, they could carry 6 wide receivers like they did last year at the end of camp, and you could get a guy like a Jeff Thomas or get Gunnar Olszewski back on the roster, or someone like that might slip in there as the 6th guy.
And obviously, people are expecting a major growth from Nikhil Harry after long IR stint and then kind of taking a while to get into the mix, especially as a red zone target, which is what everyone wants him to be for the Patriots. Who do you think has the best potential to become a superstar on the offensive side next year? That question's from Ben Hood.
It's a good question. A superstar on the offensive side of the ball. I really do think it's Nikhil Harry. I'm going to have something tomorrow morning about what he's been doing in the Houston area with the footwork king, Rashad Whitfield, and Justin Allen, brother of Dwayne Allen, who's a trainer, physical trainer. Those guys really have him kind of retraining and redoing his entire route process, his entire route technique. They are literally retraining his muscles to move his body in a different way, because obviously the way that he's been moving his body has not been the right way, or the way that's going to be successful at the NFL level in terms of route running. So they're retraining his releases, or retraining his footwork at the top of the route to be a little bit more efficient there. So I think that Harry is doing all the right things. He's working his butt off. From everything that they have said, all accounts is that he's an extremely hard worker and extremely hungry and just kind of dedicated to his craft right now. So he's really kind of poised, or setting himself up to have a really good and breakout year 2. So he's doing all the right things, and he's working with all the right people. So now the question just is, can he put it all together?
We have more of a comment here in the chat, but I think it's an interesting talking point, and it's that rookies don't do well in this system. Do you think that is the case, where the Patriots just have a more complicated system, and it just takes them longer to adjust to the Patriots organization than any other team in the NFL. Do you think that's the case?
I do, but I actually think that it's going to be a little bit less than, because Tom Brady is no longer the quarterback of the Patriots. You got a guy like Jared Stidham who's been in the system for a year. It's obviously a year longer than the tight ends like Dalton Keene and Devin Asiasi, but he's still relatively new to the system, and a guy that isn't going to be as difficult to get in that trust tree as Tom Brady was. And that expert level that Brady was at in the system really made it difficult for younger players, because he was sort of catching up with everybody, right? He was there trying to get it at one level. We're talking about graduate level course, when Jacoby Myers and Nikhil Harry are in intro level freshman courses, right? And I think that that was sort of the difficulty there. Now Stidham is kind of in that year two phase, and these guys with him are growing with him now, instead of necessarily trying to catch up to a place that they're never going to catch up to. So I think in years past, I would agree that Asiasi and Keene and even one of the undrafted wide receivers, if they end up making the roster, would have a more difficult time picking things up and getting into that trust tree. But now that Stidham's the quarterback, I think that there's a little bit more leeway there.
Absolutely. And hey, the schedule release is tonight for the NFL. Obviously, we know the Patriots' opponents. We don't know yet in which order they're going to play them. We'll figure that out tonight and have all that coverage for you on clnsmedia.com. But we know who they're going to play, and they have a gauntlet of a schedule. What's your season prediction record-wise? Joel wants to know.
Record-wise, I think this team, I think their defense is worth 6 wins. I think their defense on its own is probably worth about 6 wins, especially with some. They have a brutal schedule in some respects, but they're still going to play the Sam Darnolds, the Josh Allens, whoever's the quarterback in Miami this year, probably Tua, but maybe it ends up being Fitzpatrick or whatever. They're still going to have those kind of cupcake teams on the schedule in terms of quarterback play, that they're going to be able to take advantage of the younger, inexperienced quarterbacks or guys that just aren't really up to the task. So I would look at them to have about 5 or 6 wins automatically from their defense. Then you assume Bill Belichick himself is good for a couple of wins also. So really all they need is their offense to perform adequately to the point where they can get to that 9-10 win marker. So I think somewhere between 8 and 10 wins is a realistic expectation. I can't sit here and say that a Bill Belichick team is going to go below 500. It's just not something that I see as realistic.
And obviously the big turnover at the quarterback position. But other than that, a lot of similarities. Like you said, the defense is still pretty stout. So I would like the 9 to 10 win range as well. But Ryan Sullivan wants to know if there's any free agents still out there that would be intriguing for the Patriots.
Well, the name that everybody's going to continue to talk about nonstop is obviously Cam Newton. That's not going to happen. The cap space isn't there. A lot of that type of stuff is it's just too difficult. The one guy that I would look at that's still there is Snacks Harrison, who was with the Lions last year, had a difficult season for them, but he's that run stuffing defensive tackle. Now they did sign Bo Allen. Maybe they think Bo Allen is adequate for that type of role. But I look at last year, and we all thought that Mike Pennell was just going to be sharpied in as a starting D tackle for the Patriots, and it never really worked out for him in training camp and in the preseason. And he ends up getting cut and moving on, and ends up in Kansas City by the end of the year. So you never really know with these guys, right? And Bo Allen's one of those guys I think that could easily go either direction. It could go the Mike Pennell direction, or it could go, let's say, like the Allen Branch direction, where it works out beautifully. You just don't really know. So I would like to see them add another body on the defensive line, a guy like Snacks Harrison. Mike Daniels is also out there as well. They might be a little bit too costly for the Patriots with their cap situation, but if they can move some money around, I'd like to see it.
Moving over to Twitter for just a moment, we've got a couple questions coming in here. One is interesting. It's about Derrick Rivers. It's whether or not, if he's healthy and finally flashes his talent, whether or not he can make the roster. We know Bill Belichick has said he's got a future in the organization before, but we just haven't been able to see it. What are your thoughts on Derrick Rivers?
I have been a Derrick Rivers truther fan from the very beginning. I loved the pick back in that draft. I thought that he was going to be a very good player for them. It hasn't worked out. And I think the one thing that you look at with Rivers is that he doesn't have a great repertoire of pass rush moves. He's really just a speed to power guy on the edge, and he doesn't have a whole kind of variety of different moves. That's one thing I think he's been trying to work on. The other thing is his timing into his pass rush moves. He really tends to go too late with his move, and by the time he's already into some sort of move to kind of finesse his way around a tackle, it's a little bit too late and the tackle's already got his hands on him and he's already stopping his rush. So it was more of kind of like a developmental thing, getting his timing down, getting a counter move in there. A lot of these guys come into the NFL Sierra and they have one really good pass rush move. Derrick Rivers had a great speed to power rush, excellent speed to power. But these tackles in the NFL, they will watch film on you and they will prepare for you and they'll be ready for your go-to move. So they're going to have a set that's prepared for, okay, when he goes to speed to power, this is what I'm going to do against it. So the really good rushers are the great ones. They have a counter. So they say, okay, you're going to get my speed to power. You're going to sit on that all day. So I'm going to go speed to power spin and you're going to, be left in the dust. And that's the thing that I think that Derrick Rivers really needs to work on to get to that next level and get on the field, because he clearly has the physical upside and the talent and all the physical and athletic tools in the world to be a decent outside linebacker.
Then we got a question here in the live chat about Sony Michel. Obviously, last season was very up and down for Michel and just didn't live up to the expectations, obviously, from the year before. And Hayden asked if you think that Sony could be 1,000-yard rusher this season with a probably run-heavy offense.
Well, I think that's a good question. I think that with Sony, the thing that you look for, if he can evolve a little bit in terms of his speed to the edge and just kind of get that burst back that we saw at Georgia. I don't know if that guy is ever going to be there again, but he's a very efficient runner between the tackles. He makes good reads off of his tackles as well. And I think that there's a lot to sort of like about his game that people don't give him a ton of credit for, because it's not the flashy jump cuts that we saw from Dion Lewis, where he's just making people miss left and right. It's not the breathtaking speed that you can see from other guys that are just taking, 60-yard runs to the house and stuff like that. So it's not as sexy as some of these other runners across the league. But the one thing that you do really see with Sony is that he really understands his reads. He understands where his blocks are going to be, where the kind of the scheme is telling him to go, and where his openings off of that are going to be. So he makes very good reads, and he's very kind of, when he gets north and south and he sticks to that, he can be a very effective runner. So I could see 1,000 yards. I mean, he was close last year. I think he was up in the 900 range last year. So I think 1,000's realistic. The run heavy aspect of it, I think we'll see.
Right.
I think it's easy to sit there here and say that they're going to be a very run heavy team. That would make a lot of sense. But let's see, once we get into the season, how game scripts go, how the flow of things is going, then we'll kind of figure out a little bit more if they're going to be truly run heavy.
And we've got a question here about the AFC East. I'm personally excited for this season because I think the AFC East is going to be the most exciting it has ever been in recent memory. Obviously, the Patriots look a lot different than people have known them to look for the past 2 decades. And then obviously Miami doing some interesting things in the offseason, as well as the Bills and Jets. But Miami, I know, has won the offseason, quote unquote, a couple times, then it never really quite matriculated into the actual season. So we'll have to wait and see there. But are you excited about the AFC East and the level of competition that is probably going to be different this season?
I do like the moves that these other teams are making. I think the Jets, for example, they finally made a good organizational decision to take a left tackle in the first round. I think they easily could have gotten caught up in like a Jerry Jeudy and taken a wide receiver there at that point, but they made the wise decision of let's protect the franchise and Sam Darnold first, and then we'll worry about who he's going to throw the football to. That's sort of the right way to think about things, just from a value standpoint, is you want to really build on the offensive line and on the line of scrimmage and not build at receiver. The old Jets are an old AFC East team from, yesteryear when the Patriots were just mopping everything up. They would have went out there and drafted CeeDee Lamb, or they would have drafted Jerry Jeudy, and they would have went for the flash. And that might have made headlines on draft weekend and got them A+ grades from the draft experts and stuff like that, but it wasn't going to win them football games when it really came down to it. So I think that was a good decision. The Bills are certainly building a monster. That team right now is the best team in the division on paper. I think that's not really much of an argument there at this point. the Patriots have a little bit of an argument for it too, certainly. I'm not saying it's not close, but I think the Bills, in terms of what they have on offense with that firepower, building off of what they have on defense already in place, that's a very, very well-rounded roster with a ton of talent at the top. So I really like what Buffalo's doing. I personally think Miami is a couple of years away. It really is going to come down to at the end of the day, like it always does, what they can get out of the quarterback position. If Tua is healthy and is himself and looks right, then obviously their ceiling is very, very high with him at quarterback. But that can really come and go in a second with him. We saw that at Alabama, where they can come out for 6 games, 7 games. He's a Heisman Trophy favorite. And then all of a sudden it kind of goes all out. The rug gets pulled underneath from an injury and it all goes away. So that's the problem with Miami, I would say. But overall, the AFC East is going to be pretty competitive this year. I think it's more competitive than people give it credit for in terms of just recent years as well. The teams just haven't always been healthy or kind of clicking at all cylinders at the same time.
And back to Twitter, we got a question about Doron Harmon and who's going to fill that role. We've talked a lot about how deep this Patriots secondary is. Obviously, the Patriots addressing that even more so in the draft by picking up Kyle Duggar with their first round pick. Who do you see? Is there a direct Harmon replacement?
Well, I think in terms of veteran replacement, Cody Davis, who they signed over from the Titans, he's played a little bit of free safety, played a little bit in the middle of the field. He can do those sort of things. I'm not sure if they're exactly going to go that direction, if they think of him more as a special teamer, but he kind of reminds me of Terrence Brooks last year in the sense that we all thought that they signed him as a special teamer, and he ends up making a name for himself in training camp on defense and actually gets some snaps on the defensive side of the ball. So I could see that happening for Cody Davis, but in terms of who's really going to be the Harmon replacement, I think Duggar has a really good chance of doing it. Talking to his coaches for that piece I did earlier this week, they said his best skill or his most pro-ready skill right now is playing in center field and ranging over the top as a free safety and playing the ball in the air. That's exactly what they used him for time and time again at Lenoir Round. And I think that that's what he's going to do right away. That's going to translate. I know a lot of people think of him as playing in the box, guarding tight ends, doing that kind of thing. But I actually think he has a really high upside as a free safety, as well as sort of that center fielder ball hawk. So I think that he has a chance. Doron Harmon comes in, he plays 40% of the snaps or whatever it ends up being. I think Duggar has a chance to fill that role as a rookie.
Absolutely. And we're going to take a couple more questions here. So drop them in our live chat for our Patriots live Q&A. There's a question here about Dietrich Wise and whether or not he's reached his potential. I think it's an interesting point because a lot of these way too early 53-man roster projections has Dietrich Wise kind of on the cusp of making the 53-man roster because the Patriots kind of seem to be looking towards moving to a more athletic edge defenders. Do you think Dietrich Wise has more in the tank to prove, or do you think that his time might be over in New England?
I don't know if his time is over in New England, but he has sort of penciled himself in as a specialized player. He's a sub package, third down, pass rushing defensive end. The Titans really circled 91 on the line of scrimmage in that playoff game last year, and they ran it right at him every chance that they had, and they really blew him off the ball quite a few times, honestly. A lot of Derrick Henry's bigger runs, where if you watch them back again, it's going right at Dietrich Wise, double team him at the point of attack, and it's struggled for him right now to play the run effectively. So I think that unfortunately he didn't necessarily blossom into that guy that we were expecting to be more of a three down player, a guy that can play the run and rush the passer. He's pretty much stuck now, I would say, as a situational pass rushing type of talent. And that's going to be something that's going to pigeonhole him a little bit. So I do see the chance that maybe he is on the outside looking in there. A little bit thin up front, though, on the defensive line, and they're going to need the bodies. So I don't know if I necessarily see him completely off the roster, but in terms of his ceiling and can he grow and his potential, I'm just not sure he's ever going to grow into an effective run defender, and he might be somebody that's more kind of just a pass rushing type situation player.
Ryan Sullivan's got a question here, not to skip to 2021, but the Patriots have a lot of free agents in the future. Who do you think they need to focus on re-signing or getting extensions done now? We know the free agent, there's a lot of them this offseason as well, as we talked about it a lot.
There's 33 free agents for the Patriots next year. Some of those guys are not all unrestricted. Some of them are like restricted free agents, like a JC Jackson. But obviously, Joe Tooney's playing on the tag this year, or as of right now. So he's going to be a free agent. Dante Hightower, Mohamed Sanu, James White, Lawrence Guy, Rex Burkhead, David Andrews. I mean, some big time names there, Sierra. Not just, these aren't guys that are just, at the back end of the roster. We're talking about team captains, really good, effective players for a number of years here in New England. So I would look to see extensions to some of these players to give the Patriots some more wiggle room on the 2020 cap. They can extend some of these guys to lower their 2020 cap numbers. Dante Hightower is probably the best candidate to do that. His cap hit is over $12 million for the 2020 season. They can really lower that number by extending him, giving him a 2 or 3 year deal, and allowing them to stretch that cap hit across multiple seasons. I also wouldn't be surprised to see Lawrence Guy get a extension here at some point, because he's really kind of blossomed into a stalwart on the defensive line and really a rock in the middle for the Patriots on defense, just named to the 2010s all-decade team. So I think that there's a lot to be said to add him back into the roster. And then obviously James White, at some point you got to take care of James White and take care of Sweet Feet. So I think that they'll get something done with him as well. I don't see him going anywhere. So if you're looking for extensions other than Tooney, obviously, who's the obvious one, I would look at those three guys.
Well, coming up tonight, the NFL releases its schedule for the 2020 NFL season, something we can all look forward to as we patiently await the return of sports. We'll have all your coverage on it once we find out the Patriots schedule. You can check it out on our website at clnsmedia.com and on our YouTube channels at CLNS Media and Patriots Press Pass. Subscribe to us there. Thanks for tuning into our Q&A. We'll do it again soon.